bass players, and welcome back to another lesson, how to apply the modes to songs. Not only how to play the modes, but how to apply them. First, we have to know all the 7 modes of the major scale, but then we're going to figure out what are the kinds of chords that each mode can be used on. And that's the most important part. So to get it started, let's find the C major scale on the A string. This one, we're going to call it Ionian, okay? That's going to be the first mode of the major scale. Now, when you learn a mode, it's also very important to learn the intervals inside this mode. We have a root, and then a major 2, major 3, perfect 4, perfect 5, major 6, major 7, and then the octave. Now, when we start the C major scale from the second note, it becomes the new mode, which is called the Dorian. The mode can be 2 things at the same time. I can play all these notes and think about it. This is the major 2, this is the major 3, this is the perfect 4, because they are the same thing. The exact same notes that I just played here, just a different fingering, but it is the same note. So again, I could think of it that way. But for the sake of the exercise, and so we can separate the modes individually, we're going to think of it as its own little universe. And we're going to start at the D and consider the D the root for this moment. And one thing I always recommend for beginners is don't worry about memorizing every single interval. Just remember the ones that are different from the major scale. So we still have a major 2, we still have a perfect 4, we still have a perfect 5, and we still have a major 6. So what happened is our 3 and our 7 became minor now. And that's the Dorian. It's just a flat 3 and a flat 7. Now let's start the C major scale from the third note, the E. Once again, I'm going to reinforce that argument from before that, again, this can just be the C major scale starting on E. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We can think of it that way. But we can also think of it as its own little universe. And I'm going to use that word a lot because I want to reinforce that point that this can be its own thing. And now the E is the root. This mode is called the Phrygian mode, and the intervals that are different from the major scale are going to be the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 7. All those intervals are going to go flat, and they're going to be minor. So it's a minor 2, minor 3, minor 6, and minor 7. That's how you can remember and think about the Phrygian. Now let's start the C major scale from the fourth note, the F. That mode has a root, major 2, major 3, augmented 4, perfect 5, major 6, major 7, and then the octave. This is a very unique mode because it looks just like the major scale, but our 4 goes up. It's an augmented 4. It's a sharp 4, how we call it. And that's the only difference from this mode to the major scale, that 4 going up. We're almost done. We only have 3 more to go. The next one is going to be the C major scale starting from the 5th note. We have G, which is the root, major 2, major 3, perfect 4, perfect 5, major 6, minor 7, and then the octave. So the Mixolydian mode is again also very similar to the major scale. The only difference is that 7 becomes minor. So everything is just like a major scale, but we have a minor 7. If I start my C major scale from the 6th note, and I think of that note as the 1 now, as the root, we will get the Aeolian mode. It has a root, major 2, minor 3, perfect 4, perfect 5, minor 6, minor 7, and the octave. This also happens to be the exact same scale as the natural minor scale. So this is what we call our relative minor scale. And if you know your minor scale, you can also call it Aeolian. It's technically the same thing, just like C major and Ionian are the same. So the intervals that are different from the major scale here are going to be the 3, the 6, and the 7. minor 3, minor 6, and minor 7. And that takes us now to the 7th and the last one, the Locrian Mode, okay? That one is the C major scale starting from the B, the 7th note. And we have this, the root, the minor 2, minor 3, perfect 4, diminished 5th, minor 6, minor 7, and the octave. So this is the most altered mode out of all the modes that we have so far, because it has the minor 2, minor 3, diminished 5, minor 6, and minor 7. Everything is flat, okay? So this one, basically the only thing that's the same as the major scale is the 4. It has a perfect 4, but everything else is different. And now comes the most interesting and the most exciting part. How do I use these modes? What's the point of learning them? Well, after you practice each of these modes individually and you learn the fingering of each of these modes, the goal is to associate a kind of mode with a kind of chord. And what do I mean by that? We can separate these modes into 4 categories. We have the major mode, we got the minor modes, we got the minor 7 flat 5 modes, which is the half diminished one, which is the Locrian, and then we have the dominant mode. And those 4 categories are going to be the same categories for our kinds of chords. So the idea is that in music, most of the chords we're going to be dealing with are going to be either major 7 chords or major triads, minor 7 chords or minor triads, minor 7 flat 5 chords, and then dominant 7 chords. Okay, and the dominant 7, when it becomes a triad, it becomes a major triad, so we gotta have to talk about that a little bit. But my point is, those are the 4 most common kinds of chords we find in music. And of course, there are other kinds. There are the minor major 7s, there are the augmented, there are the diminished 7 chords. So there are other kinds of chords we're going to be dealing with. But those 4 ones are going to be the overwhelming majority of chords that we find in music. If you remember those 4 chords, we can start now to connect a kind of mode with a kind of chord. So for example, there are 2 major 7 modes. So meaning modes that have the major 7. If we stay in the key of C major, we would have the C major, which is Ionian. This mode has the major 3rd and the major 7. That combination means it's a major chord with a major 7. And the Lydian is also the same combination. It's a major 3rd with a major 7. So those 2 modes are very similar. And if we are within a song and we spot a major 7 chord in that song, those modes could work in that chord. The thing is, which one should we use? Because we have 2 options here. And here is how it works and how we can make a choice. If we have a song in a certain key, let's say in the key of C major, and we see a C major 7 chord there, that is what we call the 1 chord, right? So every song has a key, and it's very important to understand what is the 1, right? What is the key of that song? If we are dealing with the 1 chord, the 1 major 7 in this case, we should use the major scale for that chord. That makes sense. We have a major key, we can use the major scale. But the cool thing now is that if you spot any other kind of major 7 chord in that song, you can actually just go for the Lydian and it would work. It would sound good over that chord. And you might think, okay, well, in the key of C major, we also have the F major 7 chord, right? That's the 4 chord. Yes, if we see the F major chord or F major 7 chord in a song, we could use the F Lydian mode. But that's a very obvious example. What if within a song in the key of C major, we see a A flat major 7 chord? That chord, doesn't matter where it's coming from, is a major 7 chord that is not the 1. The scale you should use to navigate that chord during that measure, or how long is that chord, however long is that chord, is the A flat Lydian. And that's why I asked you before to learn your fingerings and learn the modes. Because if you remember that the F Lydian looks like this, you can go to A flat. Let's just say I play on the E string here. And now you have the A flat Lydian that would work over that moment for that song. And that's the magic of learning modes. You understand how to spot a certain scenario and a different situation, and then you start to understand what are the notes that would sound good in this moment. And I say good, because good is subjective. And the way we do it is like this. We understand the key, and then we understand what is not in the key. If something is not in the key, so like an A flat major 7 chord, it's not that tonic, how do I know how to play over that chord? And that's how you do it. You're going to use the Lydian mode. It's the one that fits that chord. I can stay here and talk about this all day, but let's actually listen and see how this sounds. All right, so I think we came up with a pretty cool bass line right there. The first one was very straightforward. I was just playing roots and fifths. But the second time, you see, I was exploring the scales. I was playing within the C major scale. Same thing here. I was still thinking about C major scale, but the moment that A flat showed up, I was thinking about these notes over here, the A flat Lydian, and I kind of play backwards. The A flat Lydian mode, that's all. And you can see like it sounds nice, right? Like it works. That's how cool it is. You now understand that it's that simple, okay? You just, especially, at least for now, for major 7 chords. If you spot a major 7 chord, you just ask yourself those questions. Is this chord the one? And if it's not, you're gonna use the Lydian. That's as simple as that, okay? Now, just to clarify regarding the triads, sometimes we might see C major, D minor, A flat major, and G major, just those 4 triads. The problem with triads is that you would have to understand some level of music theory to know that, okay, that A flat major, would it be A flat major 7 or would it be A flat 7? Because a major triad could be both of those, right? And the thing is that we don't really know. If someone just play A flat triad, it could be both. It could be just the A flat major 7, but it could be a flat 7. And a lot of it would depend on the melody or just the overall vibe of the song. It's something that it gets a little bit more, complicated, even though triads are simpler than 7 chords. But the more music theory you know, the more you can kind of make a good guess of what that 7 version of that chord would be. And at the end of the day, you want to use your ear as a guide. So whatever sounds good would work. Okay, now when we jump to minor 7 chords, it's going to be very similar, but we have actually 3 scales that are minor scales within the mode. And those scales are the Dorian. I'm going to play in the key of C, will be D Dorian. The Phrygian and the Aeolian. All those scales have a minor third and a minor 7 and a perfect 5, okay? That combination creates a minor chord or a minor 7 chord. We have to figure out, just like we did before with the major 7 chords, when to apply each. Here's how it goes. If we have a song in a minor key this time, okay? So let's say we are in the key of A minor. If we see the A minor or A minor 7 chord being played in a song, we can use the Aeolian mode, also known as the natural minor scale, because that is the 1 of the key, okay? We want to use the Aeolian when we have the minor 1 chord, okay? For all the other minor chords, technically, we could make the Dorian work. Dorian is our go-to scale. I always tell people, when in doubt, use the Dorian, okay? So if you spot a minor 7 chord, even technically on that A minor 7, we could make the Dorian work, okay? The Dorian is a great scale to play over minor and minor 7 chords. Now that brings us to the Phrygian. Well, the Phrygian is a great scale to use when we are dealing with the 3 chord of a major key, right? So if I'm in the key of C major and the E minor shows up, the Phrygian makes sense because the third is the Phrygian. However, if I had a C major chord followed by an E minor 7 and then an A7, that is what we call a 2-5 progression, it might make more sense to use the E Dorian right there on that moment. So even then, when you have an E chord, E minor 7 chord, the Phrygian might not be the best choice. So I always say that the Phrygian is a very situational and it's a very exotic sounding scale because of the flat 2. So it's not something that you kind of want to overuse. I would say focus more on the Dorian. And within a song example, I'm going to play here for you guys. We're going to have something that is a C major chord. So we're in the key of C major, followed by an F minor 7 chord, okay? So again, if you know your keys, you will know that F minor 7 is not in the key of C major. So the F minor is neither the 1 or the relative minor. So what I'm going to go for is the Dorian. And you're going to see how it sounds pretty nice. And that's going to be followed by just a D minor 7, which is also a minor 7 chord, and is the 2 of the key, so D Dorian makes sense. And then we're going to follow that with a D flat major 7. So again, another major 7 chord, right? Is that major 7 chord the 1? It is not. So we're going to use the Lydian, as we answered in the previous example. So my scales are going to be Ionian, Dorian, Dorian again, and then Lydian. Let's see how that sounds. Here we go. You can see how you can make so much music with just those 4 scales. Now that you know where to look at, which notes are the good notes, like you have such an amazing freedom to use those notes to create some really cool grooves. And all that I play was always just the notes from the scale. I was thinking just C major scale. I even didn't think too much about like extending my shapes. I just stay in this shape for C major. I stay on this shape for the F Dorian. I stay in this shape for the D Dorian, and then this shape for the D flat Lydian. And yeah, maybe I went up like maybe 2 notes above, but you know, just going up an octave a little bit, you can explore 2 octaves of these scales, but that's all. And it sounds pretty cool already, I think. Let's now go to the minor 7 flat 5. This one is really straightforward. When we are dealing with minor 7 flat 5 chords, out of the 7 modes that we learn, there's only one that has that combination of a minor third, a flat 5, and a minor 7. And that is the Locrian. So, at least for now, every time you see a minor 7 flat 5 chord, you're just going to use Locrian. This is the easiest one. There are other scales for the future, other ways to think about this, of course. For this lesson, we're only dealing with those 7 modes. You just use the Locrian. So if you are in the key of C major and you see the B minor 7 flat 5, which is the diatonic 7 chord, you just use B Locrian. But B Locrian and C major scale are the same thing, right? So which one do you prefer? It's up to you the way you like to think. That's the thing I was saying in the beginning. A mode, the way we think about modes can be 2 things at the same time. If I have a B minor 7 flat 5 in a chord, as a chord in the key of C major, I can still continue thinking of just C major and expand my bass playing over my neck, just thinking C major. But I can also think of just the B Locrian shape and just stay within the B Locrian shape. But things get interesting when we have a non-diatonic chord coming in the key of C major. So in this next example, I'm going to have C major chord followed by a F sharp minor 7 flat 5 chord. So F sharp is not in the key of C major, but it doesn't matter. It's a minor 7 flat 5 chord. I'm going to use F sharp Locrian to play that chord. That's all. Okay? So in this next progression, we're going to have C major 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7, and E minor 7. Let's leave that B7 to the side right now because that one is a more special chords. Dominant chords are the most complicated chords that we have in music, and we're not going to talk about it right now, how to navigate it. That's going to be for a future lesson. So the modes I'm going to be thinking about are going to be the C major, the C Ionian, the F sharp Locrian. For B7, I'm just going to think about the arpeggio. Just the notes of the chord, okay? Or even just 1-5, it's fine. And then for the E minor, this is the cool one. This is where it gets interesting. For the E minor, let's actually think Dorian. Let's see how it sounds. Let's see how it comes out. That's what I was telling you guys before. Even though E minor is the third chord of the key of C major, and we should use Phrygian, we can still make it work with Dorian. And depending on what the piano player or the guitar player is playing, it can sound really cool. So let's think E Dorian for this case. Okay, let's see how it sounds. Here we go. And that leaves us with the very last mode that we're missing, which is the Mixolydian. We use everything so far. We use Ionian and Lydian for major 7 chords. We use Dorian and Aeolian, and very rarely the Phrygian for the minor 7 chords. We use the Locrian for the minor 7 flat 5 chords. And now we have the Mixolydian. I saved this one for last because this one really is the most complicated one. This one is all about understanding dominant chords, and dominant chords are the most complex chords that we're going to have to deal with in music. So I won't be really covering the whole story about dominant chords in this lesson here. We can save that for a future lesson about just dominant chords. But here is the idea. The Mixolydian, we can think of it as the very clean, vanilla, straightforward scale to use over dominant 7 chords. Does it work over every dominant 7 chord? No. When does it work? You want to use the Mixolydian over the 5 chord of the major key. And even then, you could use other scales. But that's the simplest example of how to use the Mixolydian. If the G7 is being played and is going towards the C major, then it's a great way to use the Mixolydian. But if that G7 is going to different places, maybe even then with the Mixolydian wouldn't work. So again, that's why it's so complex. Where else can you use the Mixolydian? Well, there are many other places to place the Mixolydian. We have this thing called secondary dominants, which are the 5 chords of the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, etc. And some of them could take the Mixolydian, but I don't want to worry about that right now. I just want to show you an example that I think the Mixolydian fits best, actually, and the only place that I personally really think about Mixolydian when I'm dealing with it, which is when I have a very simple vamp, like a jam, over one chord. So for example, if I just have B flat 7, if I just have that for the whole song that I'm playing, that can be a nice way to use the Mixolydian. We could use many other scales in that moment, but Mixolydian is a very cool way. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to play a little bit of this song called The Chicken, which as a bass player, you should definitely check it out. But it's in that first chord that they play the song. It's a very Mixolydian kind of sound. And they go to other places later on, but just for the one chord, I'm going to just keep vamping and playing over that. And you'll see how the Mixolydian kind of works and makes sense. Okay, so let's hear a little bit. So here's what they do in the song. And now let's play with it. So I was playing a little bit of the original bass line, but also just implementing other things from the Mixolydian mode. And you can see it works quite well. And you don't have to be too fancy. You don't have to do a lot of overcomplicated stuff to sound groovy, sound interesting, sound funky. And I just wanted to show you guys how the Mixolydian can be applied in that way, that specific scenario where you have like just one chord being played over and over. I hope this lesson helps you guys. I hope you understand how useful modes are and how simple they are. And just practice many, many times how to play those scales. One thing you can do is you can just choose a song that you like a lot. Make sure you know the chords of the song and do what we just did today. Would this chord take the Lydian? Would this chord take the Dorian? What can I use here? And when you play the song, you can play with the song and just play the scale up on top of it. Just practice the scale up and down. It doesn't have to sound musical right now. You can just practice the actual shape. And then when you're ready, you can try to make it sound musical. And you see, it doesn't take a lot. It just takes good time and rhythm and just being confident on that mode. So that's pretty much it for today's. I hope you guys enjoyed. To download everything you saw today, the play-alongs and the tabs, the PDFs, get access to hundreds and hundreds of lessons, being part of 1,000+ people community, and join our weekly hangs, our monthly theory lessons, all that stuff, you can check out the link below and join the Patreon right now, okay? We just started a 12-week course for bass beginners. Over there, you're gonna have access to a bunch of lessons where you have a goal to achieve. You always have a final to play every week and videos explaining everything where you can really, really understand the analysis of each exercise. It covers a bunch of different concepts, and by the end of 12 weeks, you're gonna come out a really, really good bass player. So make sure to check the description below, and I'll see you guys next video. Bye.